Hello, 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 people. Back at it again. Another episode of The World is Burning. If you want to watch the world burn with the community, give us a sub. Shout out to the 301 subscribers. This channel, if you're new here, welcome. Take a seat, enjoy. We're just following the economic crisis that the world are facing, and we're going to be looking at these 2024 crashes that are coming. Today, we're looking at the migrant crisis in the US. This is going to cost you guys so much money, and I think it's going to lead to a lot of these big cities being bankrupt or just massively cutting their services just to kind of fill that gap. The saying here, Homeland Security's Majority Fourth Interim Report says this is going to exceed 451 billion. This whole issue. New York City faces 12 billion expense to handle the migrant crisis. That's so much money, guys. It's so much money. And this is at a time when record people are leaving New York as well, so that tax base is going down. Chicago paid at least $138 million to care for migrants in 2023, and that number's going up. It's a hell of a lot of money. And now we start seeing situations like this where New York's era of overspending ends with a shudder. It ends with a shudder because the deficit is 7 billion right now, and they actually think that could end up being 10.6 billion. And even in a slightly smaller city like Chicago, who are also dealing with this migrant crisis, their budget gap could reach 1.9 billion. That's not 1.9 million, 1.9 billion. Like, that's so much money. These cities are going to start defaulting, and I think we're going to start seeing a lot of these cities going bankrupt or declaring bankruptcy. So let's get into it, guys. Let's see what this is really costing.
We don't get the support we need. New Yorkers could be left with a $12 billion bill.
City Hall now projecting that the migrant crisis is going to cost taxpayers $12 billion by July 1st, 2025. Mayor Eric Adams says the city will spend more on migrants than it does on the fire, parks, and sanitation departments combined.
Just listen to that, guys. So they're going to spend more on this migrant crisis because they haven't got anything in place to actually do this cost effectively. They're spending more than on the police, the fire, all these services combined. And New York's going down the Swanee right now. It's not in a great place. So where are they going to get this $12 billion from? They just can't get it.
Nearly 100,000 migrants have arrived in New York City since last spring, and the city is currently caring for over 57,000 migrants. The city's shelter system is at capacity, and migrants had to camp outside the Roosevelt Hotel last week, waiting to be placed in housing.
They come to work to contribute to our city and our nation's success. But the scenes outside the Roosevelt may sadly become more common if we don't get the support we need.
The federal government has set aside $130 million to aid the city in the migrant crisis. But the city...
Yeah, and that's not even going to touch the sides, guys. That's not even going to touch the sides, 130 million. That might cover them for a few months, maybe.
The director says they have not received any of this money yet. A team from the Department of Homeland Security was sent to New York City to assess the crisis. But Adams again renewing his call for the White House to declare a state of emergency in order to free up more federal dollars.
There's more they can do, including expediting pathways to work authorizations for asylum seekers. There's nothing more anti-American than not letting people work.
Now, the state legislature set aside about $1 billion to aid the city in this migrant crisis, but Governor Kathy Hochul says she's going to go back to state leaders and ask for another $1 billion in next year's budget. Reporting outside City Hall, I'm Morgan Mackay, Fox.
Yeah, and that's the thing, guys. They're just going to keep throwing money at this. They're going to get money from the government, from the Fed. And end of the day, this isn't a money problem, I don't think. They just need to start putting some policies, and they need to pause having these migrants until they figure out what they can do with the current migrants.
Breaking news. President Joe Biden's migrant crisis at the southern border will cost U.S. taxpayers almost $500 billion per year, according to a new report by the House Subcommittee on Homeland Security. The report details the immense financial cost of the unprecedented border crisis being borne by American taxpayers, including the cost for health care, shelter, education, and law enforcement, as well as the costs forced on private property owners and businesses. According to the report, there are between 16.8 million and 29 million illegal migrants living in the United States, and the $31 billion in taxes prices they pay annually only partially offsets the staggering costs. As a U.S. immigration lawyer, I obviously support and facilitate legal immigration because in most cases, it's a win-win. But this report shines some much-needed light on the costs of Biden's open border policies at a time when most Americans want something to be done about it. I'm Joseph Bovino, U.S. immigration and business attorney based in
Yeah, and that's the thing. I think we need to start actually separating what legal immigration and illegal immigration is, because if not, then why even have a border and just let everyone come in? But the thing is, there's not enough money to fund all that. You know, if we're in a different position, it'd make sense, but it just doesn't. None of this makes sense. It's all crazy.
Since day one of this administration, you've terminated construction of the border wall. You restricted the ability of immigration officers to deport aliens who violate U.S. law. You terminated the MPP, the Remain in Mexico policy, despite people on the ground talking about how successful that it was. You abused parole authority to release illegal aliens en masse into the United States. You refused to follow federal law requiring aliens to be detained during the pendency of their asylum proceedings. You terminated asylum cooperative agreements with Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. You refused to comply with the provisions of the INA that require the detention of asylum seekers. You cut out immigration judges, ICE attorneys, and the process of the asylum system itself. You support sanctuary city policies by giving them grants. You implemented, until it was enjoined, a 100-day moratorium on alien removals. You have misused the CBP One app that has institutionalized mass parole and release policies in this country. It's been described as a shell game. You create definitions within your department that you think that are appropriate. You create law, which isn't your function. And then you come before Congress and you say that everything's fine.
Yeah, that's it. They come before Congress and say everything's fine, and then, like, he's just listed it off. It seems like the government want all this to happen. I'm pretty sure they probably do. Leave me a comment, your thoughts on why this is happening. But look at that number. 450 billion a year. Come on, guys. Where did he even get that money from? Taxes.
More than 110,000 migrants have arrived in New York City since last year. 60,000 migrants are being housed on the city's dime, costing roughly $1.2 billion. Soon projected to cost the city nearly $5 billion. What do you think New York City should do to help resolve this problem? 110,000 migrants.
New York City Mayor Eric Adams has warned the migrant crisis will destroy New York City.
I don't see an ending to this. This issue will destroy New York City.
Yeah, and he's happy to sit there and say this will destroy New York City, but he doesn't actually seem to be doing anything about it. He's just on the TV saying it's going to destroy it. He says that every single day. He's begging for money, but no one's actually putting any policies in to stop this sort of stuff.
Migrants has been troubling the city for more than a year. More than 10,000 people arrive every month, and more than 110,000 people have arrived so far.
Yeah, it's
Adams
unsustainable.
admitted that he does not see a solution to the problem. He blamed the Texas governor for the situation, but also reproached the authorities for the lack of support.
Yeah, and leave me a comment, guys. Another Greg Abbott in Texas is shipping them up to New York because New York said it's a sanctuary city, and Texas are getting... they're the first wave, you know, they're right on the border, so they come over into Texas and they ship them up to New York because New York are happy to have them. Well, because they're a sanctuary city, it sounds like they're happy to have them. I think behind closed doors, they probably know what sort of a bad situation this is. But yeah, I don't think they should be putting the blame on Texas for shipping them out. But yeah, leave me a comments, guys. I want to know what your thoughts on this crisis are.
We're getting no support on this national crises, and we're receiving no support.
City Mayor Eric.
I'm a reporter in New York City covering the immigration crisis. City officials originally said that it would cost $4 billion to cover the migrant crisis. Now the mayor is saying it's going to cost the city $12 billion.
Yeah, and this is government accounting, guys. They'll say one thing to you, oh, it'll cost $4 billion, don't worry about it, even though that's a fucking huge number. Then they'll do the old switcheroo and say, oh, by the way, guys, we were meant to say it cost $12 billion. And where did they get it from? Look at Hoyer in the comments. Where is this coming from? It's coming from your taxes. The government don't make anything. The government don't create anything. They just tax you and then just give that money away, either into foreign wars or to migrants or to any of these ridiculous government things that they're doing right now.
Of New York says that it's paying $383 per night per migrant household, which includes about 2 to 3 family members per household. And this covers the cost of shelter, food, medical care, and social services. Now multiply 383 by the 25,600 households, and you'll get $9.8 million spent per day.
Listen to that, guys. Per day, just to house people, is 9.8 million per day or per night. I mean, that is such an unsustainable number. And it's not like, oh, they've shut the border now and no more migrants are coming. More migrants are coming and that number's going up. So where does this money come from? Like, do they not even understand how money works? There's not an infinite amount of money.
This is $300 million per month and $3.6 billion per year. Now, this $3.6 billion figure will remain if the 25,600 households stay in the city's care, but we're expecting more migrants, so it's going to go up.
Yep.
So they're estimating that for the current fiscal year, which is the middle orange block here, fiscal year 24, that it is going to cost $4.7 billion. This is equivalent to the orange block on the right, which is the Parks Department, Fire Department, and Sanitation budgets combined. And that $12 billion figure is an estimate over 3 fiscal years. It combines the migrant crisis costs from last fiscal year, which is the bottom number here, almost $1.5 billion, with the forecasted migrant crisis cost at $4.7 billion.
Yeah, and we know the government likes to burn money and spend money, so let's just assume that these are lowball numbers just so people don't freak out.
We just went over, and then the estimated cost during next fiscal year at more than $6 billion because many more migrants are expected to arrive by then. And since last spring, the city has cared for almost 100,000 asylum seekers. And last week I took this video outside the Roosevelt Hotel to show all the migrants sleeping outside because all the city's shelters were full. And this is what it looks like today. No migrants sleeping outside because the city eventually identified shelters, but the mayor says that it could look like this again if they do not receive federal help from the government soon. And that doesn't only mean help as giving them the authorization to work, because immigrant advocates are saying that the migrants are not looking for a handout, but want to work and want to find a job.
The scenes outside the Roosevelt may sadly become more common if we don't get the support we need. Our city is already facing a severe housing shortage on top of trying to find space for our new...
Yeah, and I don't know, because they're obviously underwater and they're struggling right now, all these big cities. I don't know why they're not more vocal about just closing the border, putting some army on the border to stop people coming in so they can deal with what's going on right now. That would make sense to me, but obviously that makes far too much sense.
As the day progresses.
We're putting people up in Airbnbs for, $100 a night, and the city will be bankrupt in X number of years if we don't find a solution to this.
Oh my God.
Yeah.
I was looking at a video of the Roosevelt Hotel, which is no longer a hotel. They've essentially said this is now a center for housing migrants.
Right.
And they've said the restaurant is no longer a restaurant, and sorry, that's just how it is now.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you do if you own the Roosevelt Hotel? And you just wanted it to be a hotel, and now the state just says nope.
Yeah. I mean, look, I don't blame any of these people. If I was born in Mexico,
100%,
we'd all be doing the same thing. It's
100%.
It's a smart thing to do from their perspective. But that doesn't mean from our perspective that we should just put out the bat signal to the whole world and say, you can come to New York City and we have no legal recourse to move you anywhere else.
It's not just New York City. It's other parts of the world. It's strange that recently it's become this crisis where migrants are coming en masse to these places and just flooding them. Like, is this orchestrated? Is this just a fact that they found out that they can do it and it's better than where they are? And if they go there...
Yeah, and I think a lot of it is that. It's like the guy just said, if I was in one of these countries and I knew America had opened the borders and are just letting everyone in, I'd be doing it as well. So I don't blame the migrants, because it's like, if you know this is a thing, you can come to New York, which is one of the greatest cities in the world. Well, was one of the greatest cities in the world. And you're going to get a house, you're going to get put up, you're going to get a work permit. You would make the commute. You would do it. You'd get your family and you'd walk over if there's absolutely nothing going on in Venezuela or any of these places where they're coming from. But yeah, look at this comment here. The people who own the Roosevelt Hotel are making quadruple the occupancy rate. They're making millions. They're just fine. They don't care. And that's what it is at the end of the day. If you think the Roosevelt are giving them a discount to put the migrants there, you're having a laugh. They're actually probably making more money doing this.
Places that are, essentially, they're charitably minded, and they would like to house people that are down on their luck, but now people are sort of taking advantage of that loophole and just swarming.
I think that's what it is. I think the whole Western world has become much more open to immigration recently. Obviously, America was open to immigration in the 19th century, but we were the outlier. All the other countries of the world, the default was closed borders, essentially. So I think the whole world has, out of empathy for the poor and struggling, has wanted to have more permissive immigration, but that sends an incentive to people of the world that they can now come, they can, abuse asylum laws. And again, I don't even blame people for doing this, because it's exactly what I would do if I were born in Guatemala or Syria. I would say, hey, I'm a refugee. This is my story, and I would probably lie about it in order to get a better life than the one life that I had. But this is just a true side effect of those compassionate laws, is that people abuse them. You get, immigration pools that are vastly proportionally male, which is how you know that they're not refugees, because where are the women?
Right.
And it's a side effect of the intended compassionate immigration policy. This is how this works. This Thomas Sowell's great quote: "There are no solutions, there are only trade-offs." This policy has a trade-off. It's more compassionate, but it also leads to, in the case of New York, what could be a serious fiscal crisis.
Yeah, and we'll leave it there, guys. I don't know how this situation is going to pan out. It doesn't seem like the crisis is slowing down. I know there's record numbers coming into the US. There's already not enough money to fund this. My fear is these big cities, the great cities of America, are going to go bankrupt, and then God knows what happens from there. So yeah, leave me your comments, guys. What are your thoughts on this? I'd love to know what you guys, if any of you are on the ground in New York or Chicago or San Fran, any of these places, drop me a comment. I'd love to hear your first-hand experience. And I'll catch you on the next one. Bye.